Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Midtown Scholar Bookstore. My name is Alex. I'm the program director here at the bookstore. Thank you for joining us on this winter evening. We're delighted you're here. We hope you feel safe, and we hope you enjoy tonight's program with Julia Spicher Kasdorf. We're here to celebrate her official book launch for her new poetry collection, As Is. So can we go ahead and just start off the evening by giving her a round of applause? Now, as many of you likely know, this is our first in-person program of 2023. We've just announced many, many events over the next few months, and we've even printed out this easy-to-read flyer up at the front. So please don't leave without taking one. They're up at the front, and they've got a list of all of our events through March. So make sure to come back for another event. And I'll just take a moment to plug next week's event with Cole Arthur Riley, who is a New York Times bestselling author of This Here Flesh. Here it is. Spirituality, Liberation, and the Stories That Make Us. Riley will be in conversation with author and theologian Drew Hart from Messiah University. So mark your calendars, and we hope to see you here next week. Couple quick housekeeping notes for tonight. We are now streaming all in-person events via YouTube Live. So if you can't make an event or want to watch the replay, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And most importantly for tonight, if you haven't yet purchased a copy of Julia's new book, I encourage you to purchase a copy through the Midtown Scholar Bookstore and get your copy signed after the event. Book sales are the bedrock of sustainability for our free author events, and we appreciate your support of Julia and the bookstore. But now I'm happy to introduce our speaker for this evening's program. Julia Spicher Kasdorf is the author of Sleeping Preacher, Eve's Striptease, Poetry in America and Shale Play, Poems and Photographs from the Fracking Fields, a documentary project created in collaboration with photographer Steven Rubin. She has also published a collection of essays, The Body in the Book, Writing from a Mennonite Life, and a biographical study, Fixing Tradition, Joseph W. Yoder, Amish American. Of course, Julia's new poetry collection is titled As Is, and I've got to read just one blurb from author Sophia Samatar, who writes, quote, "In As Is, Kasdorf brings her generous, searching vision to the frayed beauty of spaces between the urban and the rural. Her poems bear witness to rough, hard scrabble places, the labor of those who live there, and the histories on the verge of dissolving in a rapidly changing environment. As the grounds shift, the poet draws our attention to the inimitable, shining, and vulnerable marvel of what is," end quote. It's an honor to host and welcome Julia to the bookstore for her launch. So without further ado, please join me in giving her a warm Harrisburg welcome.
Thanks, Alex. And thank you all for being here. It's amazing. I really thought, well, I didn't know if anyone would come because it's not normal to give a book launch reading 90 miles from your home. So I really appreciate your being here. And I appreciate the folks at this bookstore and the existence of this place, which wasn't here when I lived here. I just feel like I need to give a shout out to Messiah College, now University, the folks who are here from Messiah, and maybe even Penn State Harrisburg. There might be somebody here, yeah. And I even see someone from University Park. Thank you all. And my parents and my brother and his wife who are grounded by COVID, I'm very grateful this is being Zoomed. Okay, I want to start with an experiment. This sounds creepy, but close your eyes. I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to close your eyes. I can see you. Everybody, close your eyes. Close your eyes. Now, it's a very simple question. I want you to hold up a number of fingers in response to this question. When you're typing and you put a piece of punctuation, like a question mark or a period, how many spaces do you put after that? Thank you. Okay, I want to say it's about 50-50. Yeah, it is mainly an age thing. So this poem, the title of it has the echo of the title of Simone de Beauvoir's important mid-20th century feminist book, The Second Sex, but it's called Second Space. To the young editors who regularize my texts, let me say sorry. But back when I learned to type on machines, not keyboards, it was 2 strokes after a period. In that beige room of metal desks, 1 semester down the hall from where I hit a wall each trigonometry test and had to request a hall pass to go puke in the girls' room, typing tests were timed. 7 minutes of furious clatter. Then we'd pull pulpy practice sheets from the carriage and circle mistakes, calibrating our scores from time, word count, errors. No mysteries. And unlike trig, a skill I could brush up and use to put a husband through art school. To even get an interview, you needed 70 words per minute. 2 years later, a wang blinked luminous green fonts on a convex black screen at my desk. A printer the size of a VW Bug heard in the hallway. Is that when striking the second space became archaic? Like saying pocketbook for purse, a place we hid tampons and other secrets. Once, a man called up my office just as I was about to head out for lunch, offering $50 in Dwayne Reed Cosmetics if I'd take a survey on pantyhose and disposable razors. Hang on, just a few more questions, he pressed when I paused. If you shave your armpits and legs, his bland voice snapped to a snarl, why not clean up your cunt? I flung the receiver at my desk set, trembling, shamed I'd been lured down the shaft of that mind. Now we'd say violation. But then I just stared out my 4th floor window that faced a wall of windows and imagined that voice in one of those rectangles beating off. No one to tell, no one to blame but myself. I pulled the blind and tucked that mistake away like all the rest. So it's weird to start with that kind of a poem, but and I think there's a way in which probably every woman in this room has had some version of some experience that resembles that. And it took me a long time to really come to believe or to discover this connection. But I think one good thing about such experiences for me, I mean, there are no good things, but if you want to make up one good thing, it would be that it gave me a kind of immediate emotional access to assaults on the land in our commonwealth, which is in which, of course, the wealth is not held in common. Lumber, iron, coal, oil, natural gas, and so forth. The first poem in the book kind of makes that connection. They call it a strip job. Stretch of 219, old road out of West Virginia, they still call the Mason-Dixon Highway, widens and divides at the Myersdale bypass. The right lane closed, drowned by a mound of inside-out hillside. So I drift to the left, now running both ways as the scent of mud floods in through the vents. All my growing up among men who skinned hills to scrape their seams, I've never seen a strip job this deep or trucks this big. No one works the job tonight, which stays light long after moonrise. No one hears me cuss. Remember Striptease? The goop mom painted onto antiques, how it burned your skin and buckled varnish. Ever feel how hot wax stroked on the bone beneath your brow stings with the flick of a stylist wrist? Ms. Wojtek, turquoise eyelids and coral lips, danced on stage at the Silver Dollar out on Route 30. Everyone said, but who had seen? Her specialty? One semester of creative writing for 11th graders. She's gone by now. Oh, let her rest on a green hill somewhere. Let the light hold until I make it home from a job where I sat in a clean, quiet room in a brick hall built during the century that built railroads to haul coal from these hills and logs from those mountains to prop open deep mines or to make the ties that held the rails that became ways to walk out of those towns. Oh, how did I come to get paid to sit in a clean, quiet room and listen to lines written by coal miners' grandchildren? Listen until we find the spots that smolder and sing. It occurs to me that's another way of talking about jobs and resource extraction, right? But it's about being grateful for being a teacher. And the title poem of the book, As Is a fairly long poem that operates in that way of bringing together many disparate kinds of stories and facts and memories. It also has a scene, a teaching scene in it from a class in State College. When we were reading this book, I just had to bring my copy of the book. Holy Moly, Carry Me. It's by Erica Meitner. And it's a book, it has a lot to do with gun violence, which we're all thinking about this week. And in this poem, that we had a miniature mass shooting in State College in 2019. 4 people were killed. So that's mentioned in the poem. Also the West Nickel Mines school shooting turns up in the poem. And all the details, as far as I know, are actual, factual. My family's always accusing me of making stuff up, so I just thought I'd just say that. As is. Shabbat Shalom, I yell, passing Ben's office, because it's a Friday afternoon in February and we're all starved for sunshine. He laughs because he's secular or doesn't expect that from me, whom he regards as Mennonite, I guess. He runs Jewish studies, no simple task given Palestine. Once he came for dinner and loved the salad dressing so much, he asked for the recipe. What, that? But it's so Dutchy, I said, meaning Pennsylvania Dutch, direct from my aunt on a farm, almost equal parts sugar and vinegar. Our tastes track back to similar haunts. I sent for a DNA test, and let's just say there were no surprises. Not one drop of Lenape blood, though there might have been given Ulrich Spicher's warrant from Penn's wicked sons. Was it just a few valleys with cows over there to one valley with cows over here? My kid's DNA tells another tale. English Quakers, Dutch Mennonites, Jews settled in Ukraine. Her Oma speaks of a black dress passed to a woman during the terror times, tailored, puffed sleeves, tiny jet beads sewn at the neck, exquisite, except for a stain and bullet hole in the bodice. Pulled from a Jewish body, the dress survives, troubling our minds. This week, I read a book about gun violence with students who either loved or resisted it. This poet writes by the sentence, not the line, they claimed. She doesn't end lines, she breaks them. Near campus, in a bar across the street from a Mennonite meeting house, a boy, back from 3 years active duty, got rough with his girl, so strangers, father and son, tried to stop it. The boy pulled out a gun, shot them both, wounded the girl, then killed someone else plus himself. The strangers were in town for a horse auction. In Ohio, their funeral drew more than 2,000, mostly Amish, and someone recalled that once Dean Beachy could not hawk a horse, so he said, let's just sell it as is. That's how I got my wife, and it worked out all right. As is. The list of camps the poet's grandparents survived brings to mind killing fields in Poland near Mennonite homes where, even hungry after the war, farmers didn't plow, so grass returned. When West Nickel Mines Amish school was raised and planted in perennial pasture before sunrise, leaving nothing to photograph, so the reporters finally went home, a local rabbi said, if they had been Jews, a memorial would have gone up. They would not forget. 5 slain girls, not 6 million, nor unknown millions starved, shot, sent to the gulag. Commissar of munitions, Stalin said of the Ukrainian famine, if one man starves, it's a tragedy. If millions, it's only statistics. I cannot get over the sight of the poet's mom, born in a DP camp in Stuttgart, held high above her own mother's head, red hair blazing like a torch to show Eleanor Roosevelt the next new citizen bound for New York. Today, the 45th president declared a national emergency to erect a wall against immigrants. Towns in medieval Europe closed their gates because strangers carried plague. But I grew up during Vietnam with a dream of shalom. In the city of brotherly love, Ulrich Spicher worked off his passage before acquiring land at Tulpehocken. On the charming Nancy's ship list, his name is spelled Ulrich Spicher, among several other Amish names, all marked by an illiterate X. Ben Franklin hated those swarthy masses at Germantown, planned English-only schools. Historians think the charming Nancy belonged to Benedict Arnold. I too write by the sentence, compose as is, then break my lines. Thank you. That would be the Ars Poetica, right? Students, yes. There's a series of 5 poems in this book that are based on living with a young woman in high school in my house, my daughter. And I started hearing the things I was saying. And so each of these poems, it was just a way of coping. The title is like, when I say something like, when I say, is that what you're wearing? Or when I say, clean your room, or when I say, make a list, or when I say, it's your life, you know, these are literally all the titles of the 4 of the 5 poems. I'm going to read one of them, but so what the poem is what I mean, or what I hope I mean, or something like that. But it's all like what doesn't get said. And they all look like this, which is this form I've been working in. Well, I kind of cooked up to, it's a sonnet, but it's for like troubled love relationships. So the lines, well, you see the lines are dropped, like the 2 lines and you drop it and it's 2 lines. So it looks like that. Or it looks like, I'm calling it a strangled sonnet because it looks like you just, when I say, okay, take my car, I mean, I'll take the bus. Fueled by compressed natural gas, low emissions, but fracked with diesel machines and toxic compounds hauled in big trucks. I know she'll come home happy with a glowing fuel light, fenders crusted with the gray dust that billows off narrow dirt roads on these ridges. Oh, at her age, I drove highways at 90 in a Plymouth Fury that got 15 miles to the gallon. Gay 80s, when Ronald Reagan tore the solar panels off the White House roof, like some teenage brain unable to see past immediate thrills to whatever disaster has to come next. I mean, until I hear my Subaru grind up the drive, I won't sleep. One thing about Shale Play, the documentary project about fracking, one thing that was kind of wonderful, although corrupt about it, was that I got to return to southwestern Pennsylvania where I grew up and drive around on the back roads again, investigating. So this poem is, and there were a couple of poems in this book that were related to that project, but are more lyric poems or from my point of view, so they didn't fit in the book. And this is one of those. At Cross Creek Park. All day on highways, I arrived at a shaded lane that concludes in a parking lot with a restroom like a fairy tale cottage. Stone veneer below chocolate siding. A white-haired guard in uniform leaned against his spotless white truck. What a gorgeous day for December, I began. Yeah, but next week will be 12 degrees. I told him I grew up nearby, but moved away, and the place sure has changed in recent years. So many trucks on the road. And where do they take all that flow back? Ohio, on 70 mostly, he replied. But it's been quiet here, except last week when they put in that privy. Came all the way from Texas. A big crane just dropped it on the hole, one and done. I didn't ask what lay behind his booth or why a county park needs a guard with a gun. When we ran out of phrases to exchange, I drove away. 7 well pads, spilled waste, dead fish, old growth trees cut by mistake, I later learned online. The restroom shows up in a piece that promises millions to townships that lease to drillers. But that day, oblivious, the sun just shone on both of us as hunters in blaze orange vests vanished into the woods. So that was in Washington County, Washington, Pennsylvania. And when I was down there, I drove past, and I was literally following fracking trucks to well sites. I drove past a community athletic center that was named for Jerry Sandusky's father. And I will just, where I come from, everybody knows who that is, but I'll just say that he was an assistant football coach at Penn State, who is a convicted serial child molester. Waking up with Jerry Sandusky. He snores beside me naked, so I play possum. Tell myself he raped boys from over the mountain in gym showers I'll never use. That a person is innocent as long as he sleeps. Then he shifts, sighs. I feel the pulse in his pelvis beside my pelvis. When he stands up, his thighs seem in great shape for a man his age. It's a dream, oldest trick in the book. Yet I lie in the dark, telling myself Sandusky is a town in Ohio named for a Polish fur trader, or else the Wyandotte word for here is pure water. Sandusky is a town in Ohio known for roller coasters and a killer whale trained to jump for dead fish. Sandusky is a football field next to Bronson House in Little Washington, where Jerry grew up in a flat above the rec center, and also Jerry's dad, Art, the athletic director. Sandusky's in solitary in Greene County, 23 hours a day, 3 showers a week. Sandusky is the Germanized spelling of Sandowski, Sadowski, names lugged into mills by men who worked 16-hour days, then built homes, a Polish social club, a church up the hill. Don't let me get sentimental about the workers and go soft on Sandusky, whose dull face in the newspaper the day of his arrest made me think of a mill hunk who hasn't yet learned enough words to speak in the blast furnace of his new language. And I think I'm gonna just maybe read one more. The number for which I did not write down. This is the first time I'm reading from this book. And it's like I don't know it yet quite. Thank you for being here and being patient. Or as they used to say on the subways in New York, when you were disgusted because you were delayed. Thank you for your patience and cooperation. So we have this place up north there called the Stone Valley Recreational Center. And it's just a bunch of land. Shavers Creek Environmental Center is there. And they have Ian Marshall, who's now a professor emeritus at Penn State Altoona, came up with this idea of getting writers to come to these particular spots on that landscape every year for 100 years and to write about what they see in some way. And he thinking that it would change, that the place will change, because of course it will. All this carbon that we've pulled out of the ground, we're now having to cope with. And so I did a bunch of poems in relation to that project, and this is one of them. In this poem, so the problem with writing about nature for me is like point of view, because it doesn't talk, you know, and yet it, well, I'll just say that to mix it up a little, I decided to frame this poem about this man-made lake in this environmental center as a dialogue with the lake. And I became very interested in the history of that land, which had changed and changed and changed. It had been deforested multiple times. It was farmland once, it was forest. So this is a conversation with the lake. Dialogue with Lake Perez. Engineered rain basin, sky shine, wind bedazzle. What swims beneath your glitter? Minnows, finfish, crayfish. Beneath them, tree stumps, mud. Before them, forest. Before that, a barley field. And before, wood hicks, charcoalers, soot. Before, tannin staining the stream. Before that, I can't remember. And what comes after now? Shh. No, what? Remove your shoes. Step in. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Julia. We're going to transition to the audience Q&A portion of the evening. So if you have a question for Julia, please feel free to raise your hand. We're also going to try to get some questions from YouTube Live as well. But I can start in this side of the room. Anyone? No one wants to be first.
Hello. So I just wanted to say that I had no idea about this event until about a half hour before it started. And I came with my friend here, and we had no idea what to expect. And I just want to say that your ability to paint the imagery of Southwestern PA is gorgeous. And Appalachia in general, I really appreciate it. I grew up here my entire life, and being in the hills and valleys of the Commonwealth is one of those bittersweet things, because you see the beauty and the glow around the mountains in the morning. One of my favorite things to do is drive on the turnpike, which is not everyone's favorite, but I love it. And because going through all the mountains and passes, it's just wonderful. Going through a tunnel for the first time on my way to college at Cal U was one of those things that I'll never forget. So that your ability to like fully pull that imagery from driving. I know the exact road you're talking about in your one poem. I've driven up there through when I was on my way to Morgantown or Wheeling or something like that. So when I heard that road, I was like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. Strip.
Cool.
Yeah. So I guess my one question is, do you think that your feelings of the area would change if it was preserved and not fracked and like destroyed? Like, do you feel like that bittersweet element? Do you feel like there's a bittersweet element to growing up and being around this area that's like, that fuels your creativity when it comes to talk about when you're writing about the destruction? Or does that make sense? I could word
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I think I understand what you're asking me. You know, this book is called As Is. And I think that I'm just at this point, well, there is at the beginning, there are these little epigraphs in the book. I want to read the very beginning. This comes from Wallace Stevens. He says, "To fix it is to put an end to it. Let me show it to you unfixed." And it's something about, I suppose it's something about loving a place the way we find it. But thank you for the reminiscences.
Any other questions? Yes.
So my question is, I think it's really beautiful how you. I'm coming back here from Philadelphia and like just relearning to love my hometown of Harrisburg and just Central PA as a whole. And I think one of the most thing that struck me the most is that you found balance between finding points of history, like the Jerry Dusty's case, but also just fracking. How did you kind of organize curating that kind of history of Pennsylvania, of Appalachia, Pennsylvania, between these like little smaller events of fracking and then coloring it with Jerry Sandusky and other major events, also just as your life as a mother?
So are you asking like, how do I pull all these things together?
Yeah, like
to make a poem?
Or just like kind of like as you kind of curate all these poems, they tell the story of Pennsylvania in your words, in your point of view.
Boy, I don't know. I suppose I do have a deep belief that, I mean, I wish things would get better. It's not like I'm accepting things the way they are. I wish everything would get better. The way people treat one another, the way they treat the earth, etc. But I also, and I think all these things are coming at us simultaneously, right? Like our domestic lives, environmental issues, social crises, it's all coming at us. And somehow it's our consciousness that holds it. And maybe, I'm making this up for you, by the way, in the moment. Maybe working it, for me, the work of bringing it all together in the poem is a way of holding it, and holding it with care, you know, because poetry making is a thing that is sort of close up, and it's sort of concentration intensive, you know, it's reading it or writing it. It's forces you to use language in a different way, a slower way.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned in passing that your family says that you make things up. So we don't have to like dive into like the specifics of that. But I was flipping through and I saw the home farm poem, and I distinctly remember the day that happened. And I'm curious if you share pieces with people before, you know, like as you're writing or as you're publishing, or kind of like how you handle that tricky piece.
The fact checking?
Well, not even the fact checking, but just like the conversation with people back home.
Yeah.
In general.
Well, I'll say in particular, so she's talking about a poem in here that talks about a couple of barn fires, and the most recent was in 2000, I guess. And I just happened to be in the barn, is the barn like the home farm of my father that my cousins now farm. I showed that poem to those guys, to the farmers. I did. They have more, they milk more cows now. So probably the number in the book is gonna, frustrate them but it was accurate at the time. But in terms of, I think the big question you're asking is, how do you deal with the fact that writing, whether it's essay or poetry and even fiction, is the product of a person's perception and memory. And those are made things. As accurate as a person wants to be. I mean, my work in documentary poetry has really focused me in that way, but and not everybody perceives or remembers things the same. And I guess that's all that's all I say. That's the conversation I have. And I recognize that because I have the power, I'm calling it power, it's a gross word, to publish. That puts me in a position where my story is going to last. And I think a lot of writers come to writing because they don't feel like they have power and they want to make their story. And it's hard to recognize that when that thing gets printed, you really do have power. And that's the difficulty, I think, to negotiate.
Hi, thanks
Yeah.
for being here. Hi. Erica Meitner and I have actually been friends for 25 years.
Wow.
And I got to have a Passover Seder with her mom and her grandmother when we were young. So when you held up her book, I was like, oh, so sorry if that was disturbing. I wanted to ask you about the cover. I saw the credit but is there a bigger story, or can you talk
Sure.
about how it came to be?
Yeah, there's a wonderful story about the cover. So Helen O'Leary is an Irish poet who teaches at Penn State. This past summer, I was in Ireland with her for 5 weeks and with Claire Williams in the back row there. And during that period, Pitt, out of the blue, said, oh yeah, we want to publish your book. We need the final manuscript and a cover in a month. And I was abroad. And two really fortunate things happened. One was one of the students got COVID and had to be quarantined for 7 days, which meant that I had to just be in a room above a pub for 7 days. So it was loud. I mean, it's not ideal, but I had all that time to work on the manuscript. And Helen, I was traveling with Helen and I just said, Helen, send me your website. I need to find a cover. And I feel like this cover, I love it because what I see when I look at it is a house with a chimney, and I see all the pink. So I see gender, I see all the colors of skin tones. And then I see all these ragged pieces held together with these little bitty pegs. And I feel like it really represents what the book is trying to do. Thanks for asking, Jamie Beth.
Hi, Julia.
Hi,
Lovely reading, by the way.
thank you.
My question relates actually to Ireland. As you all know now, you were quarantined for several days, which gave you time to work on your manuscript. And I was curious to know how being in Ireland while you were doing that editing affected your perception of your work about Pennsylvania.
Well, I have no idea. I would love to say something insightful in response to that, but I don't know. One thing that was good was just being in Dublin, and it's a city that loves writers and respects writers and commodifies all the Irish writers. But it was this sense of always being in a place where this is very visible work. That was kind of encouraging.
Hi. So I studied with you in 1984, which dates me a bit, at Governor's School
Oh my goodness. Oh my.
with Deb Burnham.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, like, have you seen a change in students since that time So now you've been teaching all these years. Maybe this is a loaded question, but you've been teaching all these years and so many changes, like your poem about going from a machine to a keyboard. How might you have seen students change as well and how they
Wow.
approach writing?
Yes, I mean, we've all changed, right? Like the whole world has changed so much. I think and I don't want to badmouth young people. I mean, there is the concentration and the phone thing is real, right? Like that's real. And not, yeah. But I also want to say that what really excites me is that I'm teaching an intro to poetry writing class right now. And just the fact that people can present what feel like real and true emotions and share them with one another right now seems really, really important for students. And maybe the most important thing right now, it seems to me, is just getting students to respond to one another, to share their work, to respond to published texts in conversation, in real conversation. I think that I feel like there's an urgency around that that feels new.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful reading. I loved the first poem so much, and I loved the experience of it in this room. You had us laughing, and then there was this abrupt turn, and we all just sat here and didn't even know, like, should we look at each other? Should we look at her? Like it was an intense experience. And I'm wondering how you think about humor or laughter or levity in that poem, or more broadly. Did you in that poem intend to be funny at the beginning? Did you discover that you were funny? Did you go back and rewrite humor into it? Did you know it was funny until someone else read it? I'm just curious sort of how you think about laughter or inviting laughter into poems that are really dealing with a lot of very intense things.
Wow, that's a really interesting question. It's also there in the As Is poem with that little anecdote about the guy selling his horse. I think it's necessary. I think maybe I maybe learned that living in New York for a while. That there's like this darkness, there's this thing, the things we carry, and you have to laugh about it.
Any other questions? We have a couple YouTube questions, so I will go to them. I wanted to give the in-person audience priority. Okay, so this one is from Allison. Allison says, congratulations, Julia. Great reading. I'd love to hear a bit about how you went about organizing your poems into these 3 segments, how you arranged them.
Ooh, oh, boy. Can I say I forget? That was a lot of what was going on in that one room above the pub in Dublin. Was just rearranging because these poems were written in different time periods, and you didn't hear it as much in the reading tonight with the selection I made, but some of them seem to have really, really different topics. And now it is the fashion of poets to have these project books. And people don't just like have a collection of like that. Those are all the poems I wrote in the last 5 years. But this is really kind of all the poems I wrote in the last 7 years. So I think I was really conscious about themes, and I didn't want, there was a long time when I couldn't figure out about those when I say poems, if they should be scattered throughout the book or if they should all be in one clump. And I ended up putting them all in one clump. But I'm not giving her a clear answer because honestly, I have no idea. I can't remember. It was so hard to figure out how to order this book. I struggled and struggled. But I think the final section, I think you enter the book and you go down in a valley, and then in the final section you emerge. I think emotionally, I think that's the contour of the book.
And we'll do one last one from YouTube. This one says, hi, Julia, you write often about how harm towards the human body reflects destruction of the land. Do you believe that human bodies and the land heal in similar ways?
Wow. No. I would have talked to that person, but no. I mean, I can't think how they would, although I'm now really curious to think about that idea. So thanks for the idea. I mean, human bodies die and the land keeps changing. That's what I think.
Yeah. Okay, we've got to wrap up. So can we give one more round of applause for Julia?
Thank you.